hello to everybody. Today, I'm going to tell you some proven ways that you can break a bad habit, and this is in honor of Sober October. So, if you're trying to abstain from alcohol like I am, or if you are trying to break a sugar habit or a caffeine habit or stop binging on Netflix instead of exercising, then I encourage you to continue to watch as I tell you proven ways to break a bad habit. So how many of you have tried to implement something, whether it's exercise, nutrition changes, or stopping smoking or something like that, and you were super gung-ho in the beginning and you lasted 5 days, 7 days, and then all of a sudden you kind of just fell flat and right back to your old ways? I've done that before. But luckily there are some different techniques that you can use in order to get to your goals. So let's talk about, though, what is a habit and how do we get caught in the cycle of being in one, and how can we get out of it? So if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he states that there are 4 main stages of habits. And so the stages are a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. And your brain is wired to go through this each time you perform a habit. And unfortunately, we can go unconscious a lot of the times, and so our mind is analyzing our environment, and we're reacting to these cues subconsciously, which then triggers us into performing whatever the habit is, whether it's drinking a cup of coffee every day, smoking a cigarette, eating a bag of potato chips, whatever it is. So, and what is an example of this? One example, let's use smoking a cigarette. The cue would be maybe you have a feeling of anxiety in you, or some sort of emotion that you want to be gone, and then you get a craving to smoke the cigarette. Your response is to pick it up and smoke it, and your reward is that it brings you more of a state of peace, or kind of relieves that anxiety. It's the same thing with drinking alcohol. Oftentimes the reason that people drink alcohol is some sort of emotional piece. So a lot of people will have social anxiety, right? You go out to a party or out to a social event and you start to get that anxious feeling in your chest, and then you say, okay, I have a craving to get a drink. Your response is you drink it. The reward is that you feel kind of loose and good in your body, and then that becomes a habit, right? And another one too, like your phone. We all do this with social media or text messaging. The phone is down on the table, it vibrates, and you cannot help but pick it up and read it most of the time, right? Because the cue is the vibration. The craving is, okay, what is that text message? I want to read it. Response is to pick it up, and the reward is knowing what is on that text message. Okay, so how do you get out of that cycle? Well, what you do, and again, this is something according to James Clear. If you guys ever want to read the book Atomic Habits, you can read all of this in there. But basically, you want to break one of those pieces of the cycle. So you can either break the cue, break the craving somehow, maybe make the craving less attractive, make the response difficult to achieve, or make the reward really unsatisfying. So, perfect way to do it a lot of times is to break the first piece, is to break that cue. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples with some of my clients right now. So I actually have 2 different women who are both trying to quit smoking, and they're both doing awesome. I'm so proud of them. So if they watch this, then you guys are awesome. But one of them, she's successfully quit smoking very quickly, and the reason is because she completely broke that first step, that first cue of why she was in the habit of smoking. So what was happening was her partner would come home, he would go outside, he would smoke a cigarette on the patio. She would go outside on the patio and join him. While working with me, we've changed a lot of her nighttime routine, and we've changed what time she's going to bed and how she approaches her whole evening. And what happened is that is not a part of her routine anymore, where she's going outside. Now she's preparing to wind down. She's got certain things she's doing to take care of herself. And she's going to bed earlier than her partner is, so that we can make sure that she's getting healthier, right? So what happened is we automatically took out that cue without even really planning on it in the beginning. And so now, since she's not going out, that action of going outside and sitting on the patio with her partner to even just hang out, now took away that opportunity for her to be around someone else who was smoking and to be in that habit of smoking every time. So that is how she successfully has quit smoking. And then I have another woman who she's doing awesome with quitting as well. And for her, she would feel the emotion. She was aware of some sort of emotion coming up that trigger to want to smoke. And so instead of picking up the cigarette now, she now uses a different technique that I have provided her with to kind of quell anxiety and these different emotions coming up. And that has allowed her to kind of cut the cycle and substitute the action of picking up the cigarette with something completely different, whether that's breath work or EFT, and that way she's been able to stop smoking. Okay, so that's the beginning, figuring out at which point in the cycle where you can break the habit, right? But there's also a lot of other ways that you can successfully implement some tools to help you do this. So, and one thing I just kind of mentioned this, a substitute. This is my favorite way to try and break a habit. So for example, coffee, right? Coffee has a lot of caffeine in it. We know that drinking too much caffeine negatively impacts our hormones. It can affect our adrenal glands, which is where a lot of our sex hormones, our cortisol, our DHA are produced. And if we're super caffeinated all the time, we're going to eventually deplete those adrenal glands. So instead of just cold turkey trying to stop drinking coffee, you can switch over to drinking a tea in the morning, which has a significantly less amount of caffeine. And then once you kind of step down from that, so you're still having your cup in your hand, you still feel that, you feel like you're doing your ritual, right? But instead of coffee being in there, you now have tea. And if your goal is to completely quit caffeine, this is a great way to step it down piece by piece, right? You're going from 160 milligrams of caffeine down to 40 milligrams of caffeine with a tea, and then eventually you can switch to a decaf tea. And then, that way you still have your ritual, and it's still a habit to drink something warm or cold or whatever you like in the morning. But now you've taken away that thing that was kind of negatively impacting your health. So finding a substitute is one way that you can transition. And then, Sober October, a lot of people do alcohol. I did make a whole post on this the other day, at the beginning of the week, about really great swaps for alcohol specifically. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend to go back and watch that video. And I talk a lot about carbonated waters and mocktails and things like that. So that's another one that's very specific to Sober October. So I encourage you to check that out. And also, what is your reason for wanting to change this habit, right? It can't be just picking something randomly and saying, yeah, I'm going to stop doing this thing. You need to have a strong reason for change. Perfect example with the caffeine. And this is a true story actually. At one point, my hormones were completely tanked. I had very low estrogen, low progesterone, very low cortisol. My adrenal glands were in poor shape because I was a type A personality. I was stressed all the time, go, drinking lots of caffeine. I completely depleted myself. And so in order to reverse that, that was a strong why for me as to why I should start to take care of myself better and stop drinking caffeine. Because as I mentioned, caffeine has a strong negative impact on your adrenal glands and your energy levels and hormones. So that was a strong why for me, because I knew that if I kept drinking, 3 cups of coffee a day and overworking myself and doing all those things, that I was going to continue to go down this negative slope of harming myself, right? And then what would happen in the long term if I kept going down that road? If I kept going down that road, I would have just get sicker and sicker, and then I would have been in a bad state with my adrenal glands, in a very, very bad state with my hormones, and they would have been even harder to repair, right? So that's a strong why and a great reason as to even just stopping coffee, for example, or going to bed earlier, or something like that, where you're like, okay, this is important to me, right? And if you need to, write down, sit there and think of like a really good reason as to why you're doing this. Write it down on a piece of paper and keep it somewhere where you can see it until you're able to kind of get through those initial changes. Same thing with alcohol. Like, it's not just good enough to say, oh, I'm quitting alcohol for the month of October because everyone else is doing it. It's not really a good reason, right? If you quit alcohol because you know that it makes you gain weight, it clogs your liver because it's a toxin, and it takes the liver's function of detoxing other things away, and it will stop you from metabolizing your hormones. It will cause you to gain, alcohol causes you to gain weight, alcohol causes blood sugar imbalances, it deteriorates your brain. Like, those are all things that are stronger reasons if you say, okay, I want to make sure I'm taking care of myself, or I haven't been able to lose weight in 5 years or a year or 6 months or whatever it is, and I'm sick of it, and I want to finally be able to drop some pounds, or I want to finally have more energy, or finally actually take care of myself so that I can live a long, healthy life. That's a strong reason as to why you should stop drinking alcohol for the month of October, and see how it makes you feel. Recognize those powerful changes that it's going to have on your body, and then you can make the decision later on, like, do I want to keep going down this path, or what other kind of things can I start to implement in my life that are going to continue on this pattern of positive change. I have so many other tips and tricks on breaking bad habits, but I'll just talk a little bit briefly. I'll talk about one more. Support. So having some sort of support system. It could be your partner, it could be your best friend, it could be a family member. If you don't have any of those, you can go on Facebook and find a free Facebook group, like my Facebook group, if you guys want to join it. If you're on Instagram and you're not already in my Facebook group, or other support groups. Or you can hire somebody like me. I mean, that's literally what I do, is I work with people for 3 to 6 months over time to help them reach their health goals, right? Help them get healthy. And we're in consistent contact with each other. I'm on top of these people, and I'm holding them accountable, right? So they kind of have to, they know that they need to make those changes because I'm depending on them, and I'm waiting for them to pull through and make those changes. And so same thing if you were utilizing your partner, friend, or someone else, telling them, hey, these are my goals, this is what I want to change, please support me in making these changes in my life. And then even maybe having them jump along with you too, like, hey, do you want to do this together? Like, do you want to stop watching Netflix every night and instead go for a 30-minute walk? Like, that would be a nice switch up routine for you and your partner if you live together. Something like that. Because when you try to do something alone, it is very difficult because we are so strongly influenced by others. And so putting yourself around other people, surrounding yourself with others who are either doing the same things or at least are super supporters of you, are going to more likely make you change than trying to do something completely on your own. Okay, so I'll cut it off there because, like I said, I could talk forever about this, but I hope you guys found some value in that. I'm curious what you all are doing for Sober October. Drop a comment with what you're trying to change, and if I can support you in any way, let me know. if you haven't tried anything for Sober October, it's okay. You can still start. It's not the end of the world. That's another thing, right? A lot of people will try something and then maybe they fall off and then they just give up. Just get back up and try again and keep going. So it's not too late to try something that you want to try and implement in your life. So drop a comment with anything you guys want to share with me. And if you're not on my Facebook group on Instagram, I encourage you guys to pop over there. You can just go to the link in my bio to join. And I will talk to you all soon. Happy October.